Right, so first of all you're going to start with just loosening up all the fasteners. So this is the brake caliper mounting bolts, the fork mounting bolts, and some other fasteners at the top of the handlebars. And once they're all loose, just go ahead and remove them completely.
When prices are going down because you sell more. You have volume. Right now, a steak is $80.
Next, you're going to have to remove that rubber holding piece that has a cable running through it. So basically, just pop it out and it comes off easily. Next, I'm going to remove the spindle. So I got it loose just a moment ago. So now, time to just throw it out. Now you're going to have to put a jack under the frame and to lift the front just ever so slightly so the wheel can aviate in the air. At that point we can use anything that goes through that hole here to just tap out the spindle. Now you just pull out the spindle from the other side. Right, now we should be able to remove the speedo cable and the wheel. Okay, now time to remove the mudguard. It's going to be held by 4 bolts, which I got loose just a moment ago.
So it's not because we elected Biden.
So easy peasy, first one come out. Next you're going to have to remove those 4 little screws. So at the bottom, grab it with an 8mm spanner, because there's going to be a nut. And here at the top,
magazine prices were up by 30%. I don't know, I think they're up more than.
Pull them out.
So I went on the internet.
There we go. After removal of all 8 screws, you'll be able to pull out your mudguard.
That we're not going to count them as being unemployed. That's the reason that unemployment is so
And this is
low.
going to be 12mm
counting all these
socket to do
if we
this.
still measure.
Okay, up next we're going to have to loosen up or remove that bolt here, and that will allow us to drop the forks.
The Fed is going to be monetizing those deficits.
So
Money supply.
hold it in your hand, and there we go.
Buys, prints money and buys the bond. And in fact,
The fork comes off. A small omission on my side, so here on the left fork you're going to have this bracket that is held by a 10mm screw. You're going to have to remove it in order to get the fork completely off. There we go. And that way one of the forks comes off. Alright, we are now at the bottom of the steering stem, and we're going to have to remove 3 screws here. They're all 10mm heads, and that is to allow removal of all the bracketry and stuff. Now this is the horn bracket that I'm removing now. And there's going to be one more here at the bottom. Okay. And for now I'm just going to disconnect the horn completely. 1 and 2. Okay, we're now back again at the top of the bike. To remove the handlebars you're going to have to lift those small rubber or plastic caps. Alright, so now just pull this all off, and you'll be able to rest your handlebars just below it like that. Up next we're going to have to remove this 30mm nut, and I'm lucky enough to have my nut buster here, so I'm going to use that. Excellent. Okay, what will be under the nut is going to be this washer, so make sure you don't lose it. This is at the bottom of the top yoke. Here it is, and you can see there's a securing pin which needs to be removed. So here we have it, this is the pin. Now I'm going to remove the one on the other side, and then we'll remove the nuts. So now, using the 15mm spanner, we are able to remove the nut. And the best way to attack it is to hold it here at the top, because that's going to be spinning if you don't. So hold it here at the top and just move the nut here at the bottom. There we go. This is what it looks like. This is going to be the top of it. Here's the bottom. You're going to have a washer here, and obviously your nut at the bottom. Same as on the other side. I'm going to hold it at the top, and I'm just going to turn it.
Americans want to throw their money away. A lot of these crypto companies.
And now I can remove it just by hand.
But if the government is now promoting it and pushing money into this industry,
remove that one.
That's generating more income and paying more dividends, then I can sell it at a higher price than what I pay. Right? Because the business, in the sense that Bitcoin is going to earn money.
There we go, not removed. It's time to unscrew the speedo cable.
Oil, right? And for thousands of years, you know, gold will stay the same. Right? And
Okay, so now those two
we come up with
screws can be removed.
Utilize gold.
And you can lift
so
off
storing that gold, and you know,
the clocks.
You are, having
So now
have a gold watch, right? Like
just
I
a
wear
little
gold,
bit of
so I don't want to talk about
wiggle action.
You could see that,
and we can
people like it for a reason.
Remove the yoke.
But the reason,
right at that point, I'm just gonna turn the nut by hand because it's fairly loose. But in case of you not being able to do it by hand, you can use this special tool and then turn the nut. Alright, so the nut comes off. I'm going to remove the seal. Well, I don't even have to because the stem just dropped. Okay, so here we have it. The stem is removed and I can tell that that bearing is bloody stiff. Here at the top I'm going to remove the dust seal. Comes off. Then we've got a bearing, which is a little bit shitty looking. Oh yeah, that doesn't move too well. And then inside we've got a race. Okay, so I'm going to be removing the upper race by using this crowbar, and I'm going to be hammering for the bottom to get it up. Okay.
Made so much money because so many other people got in late that they were able to pay off a bunch of
There we go. Old race removed. Looking pretty shitty. I can see there's some signs of rust and wear. And now I'm going to replace it with a brand new race. Right, so I'm now hammering the new race in its space delicately. And I think we're all in. Time to remove the bottom race, and typically that's a little bit of a bummer. So I'm going to do the same thing, but from the other side. So I'm just going to go in there from the top and I'm going to try to hammer on that race, changing spots, and hopefully it will come out.
More bullish on right now.
Alright, let's start hammering.
I think, look, the way I would sum it up is, to me, I've always dealt with people who are gold is not necessarily a tactical asset. It's not a piece of real estate in the portfolio, and therefore the clients that we have that own gold, they've owned gold.
Let's have a look. There's definitely some wear marks on this race. Here, however, I've got a brand new one and we're going to install it now. Alright, let's put it in. So the initial drive is always easy, and now we're going to have to use the old race in order to get that one in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the old race and I'm going to start hammering on the old race, pushing the new one in. And the key is to change your spots, so a little bit of a left side, a little bit of the right side. Now top. Now bottom. Because I can tell by the sound of it. Yeah, it's perfectly in place. Right, so time now for the shittiest part of the job, which is removal of the old bearing from the stem. So what you're gonna have to do first is just cut the plastic outer part of it, just to remove all the rollers and get access to the inner part of it. So, alright, so as you can see, I've started cutting it using an angle grinder. And what I'm going to do is, well, the attempt is to reduce the thickness of the material to a degree where it's going to be, let's say, like 0.5 millimeter, and then you're just going to tap it with a screwdriver and it's going to break. So now time to reinstall the new bearing with the seal. So we slide it on and we're going to start punch it in. Okay, so to punch the new bearing in, I'm going to use the inner part of the old bearing, and I've cut a hole in it. Well, a hole, I've cut a fragment of it off, which will allow me to remove it easier once it bottoms out, once this gets to the very bottom. Alright. And there we go. We've bottomed out. The bearing is installed. Time for the crucial part of this job, which is putting the grease into that bearing. It's a messy part of the job, and typically it takes a few minutes, but it's got to be done. Do the same thing with the top bearing. So I'm going to try to lube it up the best I can, and we're going to start reassembly. Okay, so bearing nicely lubed up, let's put it back on. Now bearing goes on top of that. Okay, so at that point I'm going to be able to put the stem in. There we go. On top of that we've got our nut. Right, so time now to torque it up to 40 Newton meters. I'm going to use that special socket. Okay, so the instruction from the Suzuki's workshop manual is to torque it up to about 40 Newton meters and then turn it back, then move it about 6 times left and right, to make sure that the rollers settle on the races, and then move the ring back about quarter a turn. So that's what I'm going to do now. Hang on, I need to set it to the left, and now quarter a turn. There we go, that's about that. And let's now see how it moves. It moves nice and freely. Alright, so time now to reinstall the top yoke and the clocks. There we go. Okay, up next I'm going to reinstall the handlebar holders. Okay, so both literally just pop in, just like that. So first of all we put the washer in, and now we put the nut on.
Until 2024.
And it's just now a matter of turning it on. Secured completely. It's a 15mm spanner, which I guess is best to just put in there and turn the top part, and that's how you're gonna get it tight.
Central banks will not only continue
Right, now here at the top, the washer goes back on, and then the securing nut, and that needs to be torqued up to 50 Newton meters. So you can see there's a little U-shaped bracket here, and that needs to correspond with that rubber moving piece here.
Of this system that's now unraveling.
Okay, connected.
I think yields are headed a lot higher.
All right.
We haven't really seen the fall.
Goes there quite easily, actually.
He didn't want the government to get away with breaking the law or violating the Constitution. Nobody would consider it pornographic by today's standards. But back then,
apply the law against the government the way they
At that point, you'll be able to put your handlebars on,
very easily. My father was
and obviously the final adjustment of them will be left for the end of it, but now you can use those clamps and put them back on.
Yeah, but what would happen if you just left it there and did nothing?
Okay, so for now I'm just going to leave it in that position loosely because we need to torque up all the other fasteners.
What does that mean?
20 and 20. Right, so installing the mudguard, I've secured this piece of metal with some piece of tape, which I'm going to remove later. Don't forget about your little bushes here. You simply put it in. Make sure you align your bolts. Right, now final step, which is putting the wheel back on. So first, just make sure you align your speedo drive. Don't forget about the spacer, which goes on the other side. Now grab the spindle and feed it through. Okay, once you're there, you're gonna have to start feeding this spindle through. So just grab a socket and screw it in. At that point you can reinstall the pinch bolt here. Okay, at that point you'll be able to put your caliper back on. Caliper is on, now it's just gently tighten up the bolts. First I'm going to do it by hand. Alright, time to torque it up. Okay now, so let's torque it up. That one to 40 Newton meters. And that one to 20. Job done.